I think everybody got a heck of a turnout. Appreciate you all coming out. Get you a cold drink, because once we get going, we probably, there'll be a lot of dry mouths probably. I don't know. We'll see. We're having problems with the internet up here today all day long. It's going in and out and in and out. So we're going to try to YouTube live it to everybody, but if our internet goes in and out, then we won't be able to. At the very least, we will record it, so it's available for people to watch afterwards. I don't know what else to do. As you know, living up here, the internet seems to have a mind of its own sometimes. So anyway, appreciate y'all being here, and we'll get this thing going here at 5:30. Thank you. All right, if there's empty chairs at your table, we've got people that are sitting wherever they can find a place to sit down. So if you have places at your table that aren't taken already, if I could get staff maybe to put up a couple more tables. I don't want people sitting on the stage. Well, unless you have to. And we'll put up some more tables. What's that?
I said you'll take us where you want us to be on your arm.
Yes, ma'am. Just like this. Yeah. Here. Okay, Dean. Y'all know Dean. Give Dean a hand here. He's getting some tables out here. Boy, I tell you, this guy's on it. We can even have tables on the dance floor. It don't matter. So we'll probably hold off just a second to get some more tables and chairs up here. Get you guys to where you can sit and absorb this meeting properly. Bob, how you doing? I think if we get one more table at least and some chairs, I think we might have this solved here. I appreciate your patience. You never know the size of your crowd's going to be. This is what I would call a very healthy turnout. All right, we're even getting cocktail orders here, but I tell you, it's straight up 5:30. We'll give it about 5 more minutes for everybody to settle in, and then we'll get going. All right, they're going to bring one more table out over on this side for the people still sitting on the stage, and then we'll get this thing rolling. We kind of give you an idea how this is going to work. As you can see, the PowerPoint presentation is on the big screens in the front and the sides. Assembled in front of you here is the individuals that either helped put this together or the department heads that contributed in the budgeting side, the financial side of putting this performer together. Let me go ahead and, as they're putting that last table out, we'll get you all seated. Mr. John Stern, everybody knows John. John was the president of the club until just last weekend, and was responsible for a lot of the putting together of the asset purchase agreement and the negotiations with our lawyer, Mr. Kelly Castle, over in Roswell. Seated next to John, Kirk Taylor, the Kirk Taylor. Let's have a big hand for the Kirk Taylor, golf instructor extraordinaire. Next to Kirk is Richie Hood. Richie is the president of First National Bank here, and was very influential. He's on the finance committee. You know, all these performers that were put together by commissions and brought to the staff and then back to commissions and went through the whole process of verifying the information. So it's not one person's opinion. This stuff has all gone through the gamut of all kinds of oversight. Sitting next to Mr. Richie Hood, Glenn Denny. best golf course superintendent in the free world. Let's give him a hand. He says, I don't know about that, but I do, because I've had other golf course superintendents. So, sitting next to Glenn is Miss Carolyn Henry. Miss Carolyn is the head of Golf and Greens and was integral in this process of putting all this stuff together. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, Mr. John Rogers, Director of Golf. You know, John is treasure. John, we are so lucky. You know, John is a part of this community and wants to be here. There's a lot of difference between wanting to be here and sentenced to be here. And so John is you know, we couldn't do any better. You know, Don Bryant, and let's have a round of applause for Don Bryant, because he got us here. But Brother John here is going to take us the rest of the way. So, and seated at the end is Miss Gina Keefe. She is our controller, CFO extraordinaire. Now, she has put together some stuff that, you know, this is first class. She is going to kind of walk you through the initial slides and then through the financial side of it. Now, she'll be answering questions that we've received based on how it fits in the PowerPoint. Now, we've gotten other questions. I got a bunch of questions after 5 o'clock, and kind of hard to answer them in real time with this going on, but we'll address them. Now, we're not trying to talk you into anything. Listen, you know, I mean, you might think we are, but you're going to vote on it. And I don't think anybody in here is influenceable enough to be talked into doing something that they don't see. We will go through it step by step. We'll answer all questions that have been already asked and any questions to be asked. So, it looks like everybody's settled in, and let's get this show on the road. Miss Gina, you have the floor.
Flip through my notes. I can't because I have to be able to look at my notes and stuff. Okay. All right, here we go. The purchase agreement, what that is it is a purchase agreement that is between Kokopelli Mesa Homeowners Association, Inc. and Kokopelli Mesa Water Rights, LLC. And it's for us to agree to purchase a golf course. They agree to sell the golf course and water rights to Alta Lakes Golf and Country Club, LLC. We have had that agreement on the website in its entirety for everybody to already have reviewed. So hopefully you all have taken a look at that. And if you haven't, we suggest you do. It's available on the website. Next screen, please. The golf course is includes that land, golf course, tennis courts, maintenance building and equipment, cart barn, clubhouse, water wells, pond, water delivery system, furniture, fixture tools, equipment, and all personal property of every kind or nature located on the golf course as of February 10th, 2023, and any intangibles related thereto, including the Kokopelli names and trademarks, phone and fax numbers, URLs, and the like. It excludes golf course, golf pro shop inventory. There was a question from a member, just wondering what will happen to the racetrack. Is it owned by the Kokopelli owners? Answer is it is a separate property that is being purchased by the Alta Lakes Water District, and it's not part of the proposed acquisition of Kokopelli Golf Course and Clubhouse. Next slide, please. So what is the property that we have in the purchase agreement. It is, according to these tax records, owner number 1008713, and as you can see, it is for 4 golf tracks. The value that the tax assessor has for the value of the land is $501,000. The full value of improvements is $6,015,003, and so total tax value, or the taxable value of $2,172,001. A member asked, have we prorated the taxes in our forecast? Yes, we have for the 7-month and for the other year combination financial pro forma that we did. So the annual taxes are approximately $40,500. There is also some business personal property that is valued at $217,029, and the taxes on that is $1,312, and that's for computer equipment, machinery and tools, office furniture and equipment that we will be acquiring should we continue with this agreement. Next slide, please. The next slide is just a depiction of the upstairs of the building, the clubhouse building at Kokopelli, that was done by the Carl's Daniel architects, who also did the facility assessment. The existing golf course clubhouse is a 2-story building of approximately 8,500 square feet. The upper level dining room, kitchen, pro shop, restroom, and office area is being approximately 4,500 square feet. And the ground floor, next slide. This is a depiction of the downstairs. The ground floor cart barn, storage, scullery, warming kitchen, and restrooms being approximately 4,000 square feet. The upper floor has an exterior balcony, dining, and sitting area of approximately 1,600 square feet, and the lower area has a covered cart park area of approximately 1,100 square feet and a crawl space of 900 square feet. Next slide, please. So as I was saying, there was a facility study assessment that was done by Carl Daniels Architects, January 26, 2023. The complete report is available and has been on the Alto Lakes Golf and Country Club website. Suggest you take a look at it if you haven't already. But overall, their assessment, and as I have in quotes there, they're pleasantly surprised with the condition of the facility. They did have some summary notes on 4 items concerning the building. And Tom, did you want to talk a little bit about that real quick?
Yeah, the summary, I was with the architectural firm when they did the forensic study of the facilities, and they were extremely surprised with the condition of the facilities, that they were in really good shape. The existing building was approved for occupancy in 1996 at the code from that time, and is okay until any renovations or additions are implemented. Future renovations or additions may require the addition of a fire suppression sink. Sprinkle it is how everybody talks about it. Handicap accessibility is current for the time, but may need to be upgraded upon a big renovation. And then the 4,000 square foot parking lot needs a little attention, but it isn't failing. It can be taken the way it is and repaired at that time.
Okay, next slide, please. In addition to the golf course, the purchase is for water wells and water rights, 147.65 acre feet per annum of water rights owned and utilized on the Kokopelli Golf Course in water rights file H2501 et al. These water rights in the wells permitted to use them are referred to in the agreement to purchase as water rights. There's 2 water wells, an east well, it's been inspected, considered to be in good working order, and there's a west well that is not operational. Water rights, the purchase agreement includes 100 acre-feet of water rights referred to as the Phase 1 water rights, while the remaining 4,764 acre-feet of these water rights are referred to as Phase 2 water rights, and the owner of them is Kokopelli Mesa Water Rights, LLC. Now, we had member question, why is the west well not operational? What would be the cost to make the west well fully operational, and how will that be paid? Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
All right. The unoperable well, the water table is now below the depth of the well. So, the question would be, would you deepen it, or would you just drill a new well in proximity to it? That would have to be decided upon at the time of the project with the input of the professionals involved, but because of the piping and the electricity being already at the location, it might be a better solution to just drill a new well. But when the Little Bear fire happened up here, the unintended consequence was at that time the water table rose 600 feet, having to do with not as many trees to sucking the water out because they all burned up. Well, now the water table is dropped below that. So the 100 acre-feet of water that goes with the property is the consumptive average over 12 years, which is the most water that was ever used in that period to water that golf course. So that travels with the property. The other acre-feet of water are excess water. Now, in the asset purchase agreement, there is a condition that there is a valuation of those water rights, which is $400,000. The variance is whether or not the state engineer will allow us to commingle those water rights with our current water rights and outlaw water rights, or will he say that no, it can't be commingled and it must stay at the property at Kokopelli, which those water rights aren't needed to water that property. One thing for sure is that water rights in New Mexico are living documents. Water will be the most important commodity up on this mountain at some point in time, is probably sooner than we want to admit. We could, at that point in the asset purchase agreement, the water rights could go back to the the Kokopelli Mesa LLC, and then they would have ownership of it, and the club would not have any financial responsibility for those water rights. The deal on payment of the water rights was $80,000 a year for 5 years. Now that money will go into escrow up to the point of the time where we get the determination from the state engineer. If I'm still here, I'm going to recommend, and that's just all it is a recommendation to the governance to purchase those water rights and then put them on our balance sheet. They'll never be worth less than $400,000. So that'll be determined upon what happens leading up to that determination. So does anybody have any other questions right now having to do with the water rights? If you do, well, that's at the discretion of the state engineer. It could be years, it could be months, but I doubt it will not be instantaneous. So, any other questions? Yes, sir. Let me go over there and give you the mic, and that everybody can hear. All right, here you go.
if historically you've only used 100 acre feet to water the golf course, are those 47 acre feet fungible to the other golf courses, or what would you do with that excess water?
It all depends on if the state engineer can be commingled. If it can, then it can be used at Outlaw. It could be used here. We could use it at our discretion. It's in the ground. It's not like it's an aquifer where you're taking actual water and moving it. It's just where it's taken out of the limestone formation. It's not water that you look at. It's water rights. And it's different than Texas. It's different than, I was in South Dakota. It was different there. It's what it is in New Mexico. The question is going to be, if it can't be commingled, is there a value to it? And in my opinion, water is going to be gold up here. Now, that's not my determination. That'll be your determination. But, yes, sir.
Phase 2 water that we're talking about, without phase 2, if they don't commingle the water rights, okay, then what we put into the escrow account, and we pay our full $400,000. If they don't commingle those, we get that money plus our interest back to the club at that point, 100% of it. I want to clarify this because I don't think everybody totally understands. However, the 100-acre-foot water, we want, as a club, we want phase 2 in our possession. We want to own phase 2, but if we can't, there is no cost to us if we can't get it, and phase 1 is more than enough water to take care of Kokopelli. Is that correct?
Correct. Now, the question is going to be, if we want the water rights, even if they can't be commingled. That'll be your decision. But they'll never be worth less than what they are at acquisition. Yes, sir.
Do all of the wells come out, use water out of the same aquifer?
Same limestone formation. There is no aquifers in this part of the world. It's fissions in limestone formations, and yeah. Like in Texas, there's in South Dakota, there's the Ogallala, aquifer, and so that's not what we have here.
You got one more.
Yes, sir. Mr. Clark, how are you doing?
I think maybe I misunderstood or you misspoke about the water table coming up 600 feet.
That's correct. After the Little Bear fire, the water table in this area rose 600 feet about a year to 2 years later. No, yeah, it sounds like a lot. Too much detail? Things are getting cloudy? All right.
Okay.
Any other questions? I got hand waving over here. Let me get over here. I'm not as quick as I used to be.
I just wanted to see you get your exercise. No. Question is, if there is excess water, let's say we can't commingle it, there's excess water, we look to sell that excess water, do the members get to vote yay or nay on whether we sell it to an outside group?
Any transfer of any assets will come only at the vote of a membership. Whether or not they have a value to be parceled out, that'll be determined. I think their value is in a group, is keeping that excess water in one group. and keeping it here. But I think that's a possibility, but again, that would be your all's decision. All right. I'm going to take 2 more questions, and in the effort to expedite, my stomach's starting to growl. I know it's getting close to dinner, but every question needs to be answered.
Thank you, Tom. What obligation to the existing homeowners and future homeowners in Kokopelli as far as the water goes? Are we taking on an obligation to supply water to the townhomes? Tom's saying no. Thank you.
The domestic water is currently provided by the Alto Lakes Water District, as they are here. All right, well, let's keep going. All right, Miss Gina, you got the floor again.
All right, next slide, please. Okay, in consideration of the purchase of the golf course and the water rights, what are we having to offer to get these? Alto Lakes Golf and Country Club shall issue a regular Alto membership, golf membership to each owner of a lot in the Kokopelli subdivision in lieu of and replacement of any Kokopelli membership. A regular Alto membership golf shall be issued to each subsequent purchaser of a lot in the subdivision up to a cumulative total of 125 regular Alto memberships issued on subdivision lots. As a condition precedent to receiving a regular Alto membership, such recipients shall agree in writing to be bound by the articles of incorporation and bylaws of the club and provisions of the agreement. We had some questions. Would buyers of the additional Kokopelli lots be required to pay the $15,000 initiation fee? How many Kokopelli members would receive a free Alto Lakes Golf and Country Club membership if the current purchase agreement is approved by both memberships? And the last one, at what point in time would new property buyers begin to pay the $15,000 initiation fee? So let me try to answer some of those. Current COCO members that own lots will begin paying dues starting at closing date. There are 61 of those. 56 of the 61 also have an Alto Lakes Golf and membership lot as well. They will be paying dues on both at when we close. They may choose, that 56, to sell their lots, so they're not paying 2. There are 62 lots in Exhibit A in the purchase agreement that the first transfer fee on these lots goes to Kokopelli HOA. The subsequent transfer fees go to Alto Lakes Golf and Country Club. There was another question from a member. Any opportunity for Kokopelli members who are not lot owners to be compensated for their membership costs and stock purchase? Well, the issuance of membership and any financial requirements required by the ownership at the time of acquisition will be negotiated with that entity. As everyone knows, Alto Lakes Golf and Country Club bylaws require property ownership for issuance of membership. The Alto Lakes Golf and Country Club bylaws also requires a vote of the membership to create any new membership categories which would be required to allow membership in this situation. Next slide, please. Concerning the bylaws, Kokopelli members would be required to adopt Alto Lakes Golf and Country Club bylaws. The covenants, Kokopelli would be able to maintain their own covenants. However, Kokopelli covenants may be more restrictive than the club's unified covenants, but not less so. There was a question from a member, will short-term renters of Kokopelli properties be allowed to use Alto Lakes Golf and Country Club and Kokopelli Golf Course, dining and other facility? Well, COCO covenants do not allow short-term rentals, and we don't allow for short-term renters to use our facilities. Next slide, please. Also in consideration of the purchase of the golf course and the water rights is the purchase of Phase 2 water rights. Club shall pay Kokopelli Mesa Water Rights LLC $400,000, which will be payable in 5 equal annual installments of $80,000. These funds will be escrowed until the club receives the final issuance of a permit from the New Mexico State Engineer that combines and commingles all of the Phase 2 water rights with the other rights owned by the club. If the state engineer refuses to grant the permit to Alto in full, then at the option of the club, either the escrowed funds and any interest shall be released back to the club and the title to the Phase 2 water rights conveyed back to the Kokopelli Mesa Water Rights LLC. That's what you were just talking about in some of your questions. So what is a purchase costing us is the consideration, 125 regular golf memberships, 400,000 for the Phase 2 water rights, potentially, if that works out, they can be commingled. And what we're getting out of that is an asset that the tax assessor value, property value is over $6 million, and we would have 400,000 water right assets on the balance sheet member equity. Again, it's potentially, if the water rights can be combined, that the water asset would be on the books. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about how the 7 months pro forma was done for an operating budget. If we close on Kokopelli and we were to operate it or own it as of September through the end of March, our current fiscal year ending 2024. For the purposes of this presentation, we'll be looking at a consolidated high-level view of an operating budget for Kokopelli if we acquire. That would be for 7 months, and then a combined operating budget of Coco operations with Alto. But let's first talk about our budget forecast process. Individual budgets were created by each department manager for administration, house maintenance, food and beverage, grounds maintenance, golf shop, and indirect revenue and expenses. Departments heads here prepare and forecast for each line item for revenue, cost of goods, payroll, and operating expenses for their department. Each line item account for revenue and expense was forecast by month and then total for the year. Individual department numbers are then consolidated to one statement. So what we're looking at is, for our presentation here, is a high-level consolidated view of all the department numbers. Just know that there was much detail and work that went into these consolidated statements for this town hall presentation. Each department head is here and can answer any of your questions as to anticipated Coco operation costs for their departments. For example, for administration, I can tell you that there is very little additional expense for our department, no additional payroll. Current staff can facilitate the additional member services and accounting. Startup costs are minimal. We had a house technology assessment of the computer equipment, servers, alarm, and sound systems over there. Our current clubs, Jonas and 4T software, can be utilized and integrated with Coco operations. Additional expenses included our KT Connections, which is our IT security company, cost to verify firewalls and VPN. Only minor computer equipment is needed, as current Coco equipment could be utilized, repurposed, and augmented with Alto computer equipment. Startup cost is really rather minimal for this area. I would like to note as well that the financial projections in detail were presented along with each department head's report on their department to the Finance Advisory Commission, and also a presentation have been made to the board in the last few months in their review and input. We have had a few emails from members that stated they wanted to review Kokopelli's financials or their audited financials. Well, if prior ownership did have it, we didn't get it. If they had audited financials, we didn't get them and could not get. They produced some financials that were not audited financials and could not be verified. At the end, management considered their numbers immaterial as they are not a reflection of how Alta Lakes Golf and Country Club would operate its business, and our forecast had to be based on that. For our projection, much research was done and factual information was obtained to include in our forecast. For example, for such indirect expenses as property taxes, historical utility costs, alarm monitoring, internet and sound system services, etc., as well as additional property and liability, insurance costs to add Kokopelli to our policies, we had the actual numbers to work with. We had some member inquiry as to the assumptions that are part of our projected forecasting operating budget. Again, much research and analysis was done to make the projections based on factual information as possible. Assumptions come in as to the startup date. We're assuming that the COCO HOA members would have to vote first, and then our members here would have to vote on the acquisition, and we are assuming that the close and our start of operations, if we did acquire COCO, would start in September. So that's the forecast we're looking at next. That is for a 7-month period of September 2023 to March 2024 in the current fiscal year. Dues revenue for these forecasts is based on prorated dues total for 7 months period based on 61 COCO members paying dues upon acquisition. We could gain more obviously after that, but those were the numbers that were used for now. The 7 months period forecasts include food and beverage operations starting in September, an upper scale chop house, more on that from Tom later. However, realistically, it could take a month after acquisition to actually start up any F&B operations. And there could be a more limited operation than the one forecasted in this budget for the first 7 months. However, we wanted to present a forecast of expenses that were worst case scenario. Golf operations would and could be started right away for a September start date. Also, because 56 of the 61 COCO owners paying dues also own property at Alto and therefore would be paying dues on both properties, the forecast proposes the forecast proposed, we're assuming that potentially 20 may sell one of their lots so they don't pay for two. In that case, there would be a total of $300,000 from initiation fees, $15,000 a property, of which $170,000 would go to capital initiation fund reserves, $25,000 would go to the water delivery fund reserves, and $105,000 towards the operating budget for COCO in transfer fees. So next slide, please. So, what is that? Okay. All right. Hopefully everybody can see off the two screens that with all that in mind, and this is a consolidated statement, that we would actually be looking at uncovered expenses in this first 7 months of owning Kokopelli of about $358,890, and where we could potentially cover the additional expenses for startup operations at Kokopelli for this time period, as it was an unbudgeted, these were unbudgeted expenses should we acquire, is that Alta Lakes Golf and Country Club, out of its operating and capital budget, has a contingency of $264,508 that is unbudgeted. So if we stay on track with our budget, which the good news is that with this year we're running under budget year to date, and if we continue the rest of the year, these funds are available, as well as there may be excess funds that we are under budget. So other than the unallocated budgeted funds from operating and capital funds, $74,382 may have to come from reserves. So worst case scenario. Also, too, I talked about the additional funds for Kokopelli if potentially 20 Coco Alto 2 dues-paying members may sell, 20 of them may sell their lots. We would gain $170,000 in the Capital Initiation Fund and $25,000 in the Water Delivery Fund. And however, if all of that doesn't work out, we have another contingency for this funding of the unbudgeted expenses for operating COCO. Next slide, please. Okay, we have Alta Lakes Golf and Country Club has a contingency reserve account. Back in 2016, the Board of Directors approved establishing a contingency reserve account that was maintained in a separate identifiable bank account. The purpose of this account was to set aside funds to be used for unexpected, unbudgeted expenses that may occur. So we could use these for COCO. This fund was originally funded with the balance of the proceed of the sale of the water company in 2008. Expenditures from the contingency reserve account are to be made only with the approval of the Board of Directors, and furthermore, a vote of the membership is required for expenditure of any portion of the proceeds from the sale of the water company. The proceeds from the sale of the water company were $376,000 and were held in an account identified on the balance sheet. Our balance sheet is CB Trust Restricted Water District Fund. Current balance of the account, along with accumulated interest as of May 31st, was $393,710. For the initial period of operations with COCO, September 2023 to March 24, these funds could be used to cover any shortfall in covering the unbudgeted operating expenses during this period. A vote of the membership is required and would be added to the ballot for consideration. Like I said, the good news is if we continue like we are this year, under budget, year to date, and continue to be so to the year end, it may not be necessary and these funds would not be used. And if we don't use them, then they would stay in their account. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so then we have a combined COCO Alta Lakes budget for next fiscal year, year 2024, starting in March, ending starting April 2024, ending March 2025. And the first thing that we need to talk about before we talk about how that looks is, next slide, please. Let's talk about inflation. You know it. You're also living with it. Okay. U.S. inflation rate in 2021 was 7%. 2022, it was 6.5%. 2023, starting in January, was 6.4%. But we also have inflation that varies by state and across product lines. And for example, in New Mexico, the statistics show that the 2022 inflation rate was actually 8.7, higher than the national rate. And as for food inflation, 2023 ran 10.05%. So me and Tom always talk about mountain inflation, being up in the mountains here, we pay a little bit more for everything. I think if you take the example of buying gas up here versus buying gas in Las Vegas, New Mexico, or Alamogordo, it's a lot cheaper. Okay. There's also, just for reflection, global inflation in 2022 was 8.8%. So we're not seeing anything cheaper than it was before, and our annual dues increases have been a reflection of the inflation year over year in the last few years. Next slide, please. Okay, so then we have a combined pro forma forecast for Coco and Alto operations for the next fiscal year. And the three columns in the right-hand side are actually for the same year that we're talking about, just different use of capital operating funds based on percentage. What percentage of capital funds to operating funds represents of the total dues revenue we collect is contingent on what aligns with the capital and operating budgets that are approved and the amount needed to fund each budget. So for example, if the operating budget requires 75% of the dues to fund and the capital budget requires 25% of the dues revenue, then we have a 25-75 split of the dues between those two categories. So while we're looking at an operating budget here for Coco Alto, at the top you'll see if we have to go with a 26-74 split capital operating dues fund, that we could have 1.866 million for our capital projects, but then be at only 28,161 profit at year end on the operating budget. And or we could go up to having a 24-76 split on capital operating, which would give us 164,000 net profit at the end. And we generally try to always have around that for the operating budget, and some for contingency, as well as some in the capital budget for contingency. So we're looking at a 5% increase in dues for the combined Coco Alto first year of operations, mainly due to inflation. If we didn't have Coco, we would still and then not the additional revenue that we get from the activities there, we would still probably be looking at a 5% increase for next year. Next slide, please. Our capital budgets, just to let you know, the last 6 years on an average, we've had 1.468 million budgeted for capital each year, if we were looking at a 6-year average, and we've had funds of 1.56 million each year for the capital budget. The capital budgets are developed by submissions of the commissions and approval by the board of directors. On average, annually, over $500,000 to $750,000 of the capital budgets are spent on golf operations, carts, equipment, path improvements, range, tees, turf improvements, and the balance on building furniture and fixtures, tennis, pickleball, fitness equipment, house technology, HVAC, contingency, etc. Currently, $300,000 last 2 fiscal years and the next 3 fiscal years, or it's currently going to be allocated to the new pool and fitness project funding. Capital funds come from a percent, again, like I said, of the annual dues appropriate to fund the budgeted capital budget and the operating budget of the club. Next slide, please. Well, until just recently, in the last year or so, we've never had these additional funds until your board approved increasing the initiation fees for the club. So now, in addition to our capital and operating funds, we have are we on water? The capital initiation fund and a water delivery fund. The transfer of property within Alta Lakes Golf and Country Club includes payment of initiation fee. For example, a member to non-member real estate transfer, the initiation fee is $15,000. Of the $15,000, $8,500 goes to the capital initiation fund, $1,250 to the water delivery fund, and the balance goes to $5,250 goes to the operating funds. The initiation fund was effective for real estate contracts entered into after October 15th and is for capital 2021 and is for capital projects approved by the board of directors. Currently, the funds are being used and were approved for repayment of the aquatic complex loan. Water delivery fund was effective for real estate transactions executed on or after January 1st, 2021. The water delivery fund is for funding irrigation, water storage, and conservation projects. Next slide, please. Just some additional information. The capital initiation fund, the first year was only of the fiscal year ending 22. We only had 4 months. We collected $148,500. This last fiscal year, we collected $894,500. Plus the $300,000 annually from the capital budget fund. That totals $1,101,500, and that's available annually then for the repayment on the funding, $4.24 million. This payoff will take on the pool and fitness 3.6 years. If we have better than we did transfer fees prior to last year, then we'll pay it off even sooner. Just of interest, if we had started this fund earlier, we would have had, for example, in fiscal year ending 2021, we would have collected $1.295 million. If it would have been started for the whole of fiscal year 2022, we would have collected $297,500. So those were two phenomenal years in transfer fees. We are using now what we're in more of a slower transfer period on real estate transactions. So we think that's a fair number to use to anticipate how long it will take to pay off the pool and fitness funding. We do have 6 years, however, to make those payments, but we don't want to take that long to do that. Next, one last comment on the capital initiation fees. Again, like I've mentioned, the initiation fees, additional funds we could receive would be if we had those 20 extra transfers from Kokopelli. Sales could yield us $170,000, for example. It could be more than that actually happens. Next slide, please. Water delivery fund. You can see what we were able to take in fiscal year ending 21 for 3 months worth, 38. Fiscal year ending 22, 287,250, and fiscal 2023, 191,750, and so far this year, 27,750. And again, those water delivery funds have been used to deepen wells, add water lines to pond, rip wrap around ponds, install new pumps, electric service to wells, metering equipment, etc. I think everybody would say that our wells are in really great shape right now. Additional water delivery funds could come from Kokopelli acquisition. Again, if we use the example of 20 transfers a year, that would be $25,000 in additional water delivery funds. All right, that is the end of my presentation. And I'm sorry. I know the numbers can get kind of boring, but there were so many questions on this stuff. We had to get through it. So now Tom will hopefully excite you with why we would even be doing this and what we would be getting in amenities from Kokopelli. Tom?
All right, let's give Gina a big hand. I mean, she's a very accomplished lady, and it takes a lot of effort. This isn't conjuncture. This is all based on what we think is pretty accurate information. And so thanks, Gina. If I would have put it together, we would have had this town hall meeting in 6 months. So here we go. Is anybody in here never been to Kokopelli? Ever? A few. I thought there'd be more. Kokopelli is an executive hybrid golf course. Totally different from the Alto course and totally different from the Outlaw course. It is designed for people to have enjoyment playing golf and be able to get there relatively in regulation, which sometimes is kind of hard, and definitely on Outlaw. And if you ever play Rainmaker, if I had to play Rainmaker every day, I'd quit playing golf. So anyway, super seniors, and I know we don't have any super seniors in here today. I feel like a super senior after what I went through this weekend, but anyway, really is in line with what is going to be enjoyable for you, enjoyable for ladies. We can have a lot of social events that we have here over there, which will free up even more tee times over here. Couples golf. Couples golf is the biggest event that we have each week. Now, the intent isn't to flood Kokopelli with all kinds of play. You know, it'll shake out. The people who want to play over there will play over there. But there is the opportunity to do some of the things that's socially associated with golf over here. It may fit better over there. We'll determine that as a family. All right, tennis pickleball. Their tennis courts are probably in better shape than our tennis courts are. You know, there's 220 pickleball players in this club now. That's a lot. Now, tennis is growing incrementally, but the location of their tennis courts / pickleball courts would be conductive if in the future, and I already have project fatigue from what we're doing now, but the layout of their courts would be conducive to if we were ever going to cover tennis courts, pickleball courts. It would be relatively inexpensive compared to what we have over at Outlaw. So, the restaurant, beloved. Everybody, don't change the restaurant. It's just like we want it. For the guy who's providing the service for you over here, it's a little different cooking for 2,000 people a day and cooking for 50. So it sure as heck should have been better. And I'm sure it was. I didn't eat over there a lot. Mr. Stokes, I don't know if Lynn's here, took me over there for dinner one night, and it was great. Now, in the food and beverage industry, you tend not to have redundant themes for your restaurants because all you do is cannibalize your existing revenue and raise your expenses. Now, people say, oh, you're going to do fine dining. A lot of the questions is fine dining didn't work over here. No, it didn't because the space wasn't right. It was too noisy. It was too loud. We did fine dining in the old bar. So if you think about that. So no, it was probably doomed to fail. Now, I'm not interested in doing fine dining. You guys don't come up here dressed for fine dining. We're going to do good food on a plate. You know, Steakhouse, Chop House, Longhorn Steakhouse is a steakhouse. Is that fine dining? Is Outback Steakhouse fine dining? Okay. So it'll be, it'll be something that it's not duplicated for what we do now. It'll be similar. You know, breakfast, that is the place to have breakfast because that kitchen is so small, I can do breakfast over there with 2 people. If I energize this kitchen for breakfast, it takes about 8 to get it going. So we'll do breakfast over there for sure, always in season, and as long as the market bears on the shoulder seasons. But I'm going to tell you something, and you Cocoa people aren't going to like it. I don't need 3 restaurants open in January. The reason why the operational loss over there, part of it, not all of it, but part of it was not really controlling the operating hours. So, you know, I'm not gonna pour water on your leg and tell you it's raining, because there'll be times where that restaurant will be closed over there, at least initially. But my intent is once we get stabilized, the dues increase from the properties being assumed over there and dues paying, we get all of our ducks in a row, that it won't operate much different than it did before, other than the control of operating hours. And that will be based on what it is. But saying that, it's your club. It's going to be your asset. You're going to tell me what you want. It's not my decision. I have to make a decision on what's reasonable to kick it off and get it going. But you'll tell me. I know there's kind of bashful out there. I found that out my first 4 years here, that there's a little bashfulness. But eventually you tell me what you want, and we'll do what you want. It's your facility. It's your club. Guys like me, if they want to open a restaurant and put your own money on the line and get the hell out and do your own deal, this is y'all's deal. Do you agree with that? Do you believe me that I'll do it that way? Yeah. That's how it's going to work, okay? All right. So we get to the golf at Kokopelli. Again, we touched upon it. I think we have, again, it's not a golf course that we currently have. I wouldn't consider proposing to purchase a golf course that's a duplicate of the 2 that we already have. Why would you do that? Last year I talked to John today. I said, John, what's our average rounds of golf here at Alto? Well, it's about 30 here and 20 over at Outlaw. So let's say even we have 15,000 rounds that we add at Kokopelli. That's not flooding the golf course, but that is giving some relief to when you come up here. And not everybody, we live it every day. We know what's going on. You come up here from Midland, Texas, which I was there yesterday, it's hot as hell. You get up here and you go, oh, I didn't know it was Snowcapper. I didn't know it was the Kachina Doll. And both golf courses are being used, and I can't get a tee time. When my granddaughter, I said, well, that's BS. And she says, oh, yeah, butter and sugar. Well, BS is something else. But it's good for an 11-year-old to think it's butter and sugar. But if we have Kokopelli, there'll be ability to have a golf course available even during the biggest tournaments that we have for our members' enjoyment. All right, then we get down to the biggest amenity. I think that everybody, the golf course is what it is. It's the restaurant. Now, there is an ambiance at Coco that we don't have here. There's an ability to create an experience at Kokopelli that we currently can't replicate here. So again, if there wasn't a clubhouse that we could provide an alternative experience for our membership, I wouldn't be for it. Now, I go to El Paso too much. There's great restaurants in El Paso that work in El Paso. Those restaurants wouldn't work here. Because how many people bring a sport coat up here when they travel up here for the weekend, other than Mr. Graham here and Mr. Zelt? Because they're clothes horses, so I understand that. you can't have a concept in a restaurant that the concept includes a dress code. It will not work up here, nor should it. You know, when I came here in 2014, I made so many people mad because we were trying to enforce a dress code in which is now the bar, which was a dining room at that time. And, you know, Mr. Don King, I don't know if he's here today, but I remember an incident with Mr. King where he's got $300 Tommy Bahama shorts on. He's got a $250 Tommy Bahama shirt. And I don't know how much the shoes he had were worth, but they were worth. And I couldn't let him dine in the third dining room. And there's people back there in Wranglers and a pearl snap button-up shirt from Walmart. Now, but they met the dress code. One thing I've learned is that you can dress code yourself out of business. Now, there has to be a dress code. I can't have these young gals up here, you know, with their you-know-what's hanging out and their you-know-where's hanging out, you know, because that's not appropriate either. But, you know, the dress code has to make sense for what we are. And we are a place where everybody goes to get out of the heat and enjoy their time looking at that beautiful mountain. And God, we are so blessed to be here. So, is there any other questions? Because I'm going to read some questions that people took the time. When people take the time and care enough to actually take you up on sending you questions, the least you can do is read them. A lot of them, they're redundant, and a lot of them kind of miss the baseline of what, you know, we're trying to get, you know, accomplished today. But is there any questions having to do with anything that we've talked about today? Mr. Blackshear. And I say heavy on the mister.
Thank you, Tom. I have one question, and it was mentioned, the fact that there's 62 lots, that the first transfer fee goes back to Kokopelli, and if my math's right, that's $930,000. And could you just give us some color around that and tell us what that's about?
Now that transfer fee, what Mr. Blackshear is accurate and representing, would be at our transfer fee. Now the first transfer fee for Kokopelli will be the Homeowners Association's business, which is not mine. Now, the same situations is what is going on at Outlaw and has since the acquisition of Outlaw. Kind of followed the same guidelines as the first transfer fee, and it came into effect. We had a meeting, and there's a beautiful lady here that has really, really spent a lot of time working on the Kokopelli side. Miss Harriet, will you stand up so everybody can know who you are? Harriet Lane is she's not just pretty, she's smart, she's substantive, everything above. But we had a couple builders that came to us and said, well, if we have to pay dues on these properties as soon as we buy them, I can't afford to buy them. You know, he wanted to buy 10 properties, $30,000 a month, you know, for dues on that. So he said, I won't buy them. I'll only buy one at a time. And then we started looking at, we've got a lot of people in this club that own multiple lots. Because for the growth to happen quickly, that made sense. But when we thought it through, it was setting a precedent that couldn't happen. And so basically the whole transfer fee, and I hope this is helping you, Gus, is based on the agreements that were made when Outlaw was acquired, and we're kind of following the same structure. Does that help you? Yeah, I heard. Okay, well, that's, you know. Now, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Thanks for all your due diligence on this. Is there any risk of we're acquiring debt that we don't know about?
Now, there's been a title search done boundary surveys have been, I think they're almost completed if they're not completed. No, there's no, in the agreement, it specifically says there's no assumption of any debt that was not forthright in the, yeah. And that's a great question. All right. Let me sneak by here. All right.
I'd like to make a comment that may help put this in perspective. If I understand the numbers right, you're proposing an additional $1.5 million in increased revenue every year to offset operating cost of about that number. And I don't know the restaurant business, but it seems to me like that $1.5 million is coming from all of us and additional services that we purchase from the club. That seems risky to me, and that $1.5 million is about the same number as the annual capital budget. So hopefully that helps people think a little bit about the overall numbers that fit together.
All right, Gina, do you think that's accurate as far as what we've put together? Do you think that the increased revenue and the increased expense kind of cancels each other off? Got to get that mic on. Here.
I'm trying to figure out, understand your comment a little bit, but as far as the increase in revenue, some of that has to do with increasing our prices too. So to cover the increase in cost of goods expense, to maintain our percentages in those areas. And we do have, yeah, we are looking at more revenue and more play on the golf course over there, because we have 3, and people may eat more because we have the food and beverage facility over there. So I think in general what you're saying is correct.
Now, my pushback on that will be that the least amount of revenue will come in the first year. Once development starts, there's an amazing amount of synergy that comes from the acquisition of a second property, third property. Now, redundant professionals. We already got the people we need to run that as far as on the executive level. Redundant equipment. There's not a whole lot of additional equipment. We'll use the same equipment to maintain that golf course as we use to maintain this one. Additional purchasing power based on your volume of purchases. We belong to group purchasing entities, and the more we buy, the cheaper we get it. Now, we won't be buying just to get it cheaper. We'll have to buy more fertilizer, more things to maintain the golf course, more supplies, paper supplies, and things like that. So we buy more, but we pay less. But I think that is a very accurate observation. I don't dispute that on day one, it's a kind of a wash. But, you know, there's 64 lots over there that will be developed. And when they're developed, there'll be $3,000 or whatever it is, $3,500 more dues associated with that. The transfer fee associated with it. I have to assume, and conservatively, that that will, over a short period of time, or even if it's over 10 years, continue to bridge the gap that it takes. Now, the other question that I have is, you know, to myself is, well, here, let me wait. Ms. Legacy's patiently waiting over here. I want to continue patiently.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate y'all's presentation. I have a question. In the projection, we're projecting in 2025 a net operating income before depreciation of roughly $25,000. That is a very slim margin for a club of this size. With the cost of everything going up, the cost of labor that goes up, I'm fully aware of the cost of labor. We're going to have to hire more H-2B workers, which is quite expensive, quite aware of that. Why aren't we talking about having a slight dues increase here that can be absorbed so this club is ensured of financial stability and we don't have to project off of some of these transfer fees that may not come through? I think that we need to consider this in order to maintain our financial stability, and that hasn't been presented at all.
Yeah, if you look at the financial thing, the $25,000 or $28,000 excess was based on having a larger capital budget. If you move the percentages down, the same budget could also be, and I can't see, 164,000.
Yeah. Yes.
Again, we had a net operating loss last year of roughly $220,000, which was an $800,000 swing in the wrong direction. I just think we need to ensure our financial stability of this club, and if that takes an extra $30 or $50 a month from each of us, then so be it, and let's have the financial stability.
All right. Very good point, Ms. Kim. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. All right, just 1 second. Mr. Ed Berger.
All right, we've all been here a long time and everyone's hungry. So I'm going to try to get this to the end, I hope. I see this real simply, people. I hope you can hear me. We've got 36 holes of golf. We could go to 54 holes of golf. You can say it's a 50% increase or a 33% increase. Use whatever number you want. We're talking about bringing in 125 new golfing members. That's like 5% of our golf members. This is a slam dunk. We should do this and get it over with. Thank you.
Mr. Berger, thank you. Mr. Scott Schaefer.
I actually was going to speak on the same thing that Kim spoke on, Ms. Lacassi. The numbers, if things go as they are, yeah, the club's going to feel the heat in the very beginning. Our board members, when they wanted to present this to us, they did not want to speak of any increase or any initial cost or anything like that to us members, and I appreciate that. But with that said, I personally think that, as this gentleman just said, this is a slam dunk. And I'd like to hear from everybody that really would like to see Kokopelli become part of the family of Alto. And I realize that we don't have every one of our members in this room tonight, but polls sometimes are a good thing, that you can measure some things. I personally would be absolutely more than willing, as Kim said, $20 or $30. I would have rather the board bring us this opportunity and says, one-time charge, $50 per member. $50 per member, 1 month when we close on this deal would settle 100% of the startup costs, catch us up, and would have been absolutely no sweat whatsoever on us or the club of Alto Lakes. No, I don't want 1,000, Jack. You're Jack, I'm Scott. I don't want 1,000, but a $50 per member would absolutely be zero to any of us to take care of that. Craig, Scott Miller would like to speak on that.
So you guys, I've been selling real estate here for 38 years, and nobody has talked about, and this is my opinion only, this is my opinion, but one of the most successful, as an analogy, one of the most successful clubs in Texas is Barton Creek. They got 4 courses. They have a way higher dues, way higher initiation fee than we do. They have a waiting list for some neighborhoods of that community, and we are in the 1 percentile in the U.S. for a private golf community with 2 clubs, 2 courses. We add a 3rd course. We need to bump the dues, you guys. And we just talked about inflation. We need to have a little inflation happen right here in a little bit of an increment, and everybody's got to figure out that we've got to pay for what we have available here and the amenities we have, and especially if we add this club. And I just think that it's going to be a big increase. I just did a search today. There was 47 houses in Alto in the last 2 years that sold for over $1 million. We used to have like 3, 4, 5 a year for a lot of years. And this place is transitioning, and it's because we have amenities. You know, a lot of people want to talk really negatively about that pool. When I have people that come here and they haven't been here, I put a different spin on it, and I say we have a brand new $8 million pool and fitness facility going in, and people's eyes get like that big when you tell them that, and that we have the possibility of adding a 3rd course. So there's a couple of other aspects to look at besides what it's going to cost, and we're still, I never talk to anybody that's a member of a club in Texas, Arizona, anywhere that pays less or the same dues as us and transfer fees. Everybody, I tell them what they are, and they look at me and they're puzzled, and they're like, those fees are like quarterly, or what are they? And so we have a lot of room to bump some fees around here, and I know everybody wants to keep everything as cheap as possible, but progress and amenities aren't for free, and we got to pay for them. So, and
I just want to say something about Kokopelli. Some of you probably trying to figure out why they closed down in the first place. I'll tell you why they closed down. It's management in that bar and restaurant. I've been around club business for a while, but that guy, there's a reason that club's closed down right now. And we get these guys in there, it's going to be booming over there. We need Kokopelli, and it'll do good. Thank you.
The question I had was the package liquor license that they have. Tom, was that included in the? Okay, I just didn't know because I knew they had one. So.
No, the packaged liquor license is not part of the acquisition. There is a more cost-effective way for us to supply alcohol over there than that. I'm not saying it's not worth that, but it's not really worth that to us. There could be a buyer out there that'll snap it up, and I think there is an active buyer for it, is what I was told. But no, we're not interested in buying the package license.
Tom, thank you. First of all, I want to think that Tom has done a great job this year. His staff has done a good job. I'm proud of the board of directors. I've been a member since 90. And Gene Burdine, who started Kokopelli, was a dear friend of mine. We had a lot of fun together. He and I and Charlie Mashburn and 2 other people played the first round of golf he ever played here. And we enjoyed it so much. And I'll tell you, we tried to make a deal years ago to convert his golf course into ours. It didn't happen. It's worked this far along. I want to tell you that today Gene and his family would be happy and proud if we could merge these 2 clubs together and make one club for us to be all happy and family together.
All right. I got a question in the back over here. Definitely not the cheap seats, but in the back.
Thank you, Tom. I think most of us have been members of other country clubs, and stand up. Sorry. And when you say transfer fees, that's basically the same as initiation fees at other. Okay. We've all been members of other clubs, and you keep saying that the transfer fee is this constant $15,000, but it never is that. I mean, it always keeps going up as demand increases. So has that been figured in any of your numbers, an increase in the transfer fee?
No. The current numbers are based on the flat initiation fees. The initiation fee was designed, and it was Ron Duncan at a member meeting a couple years ago said, you know, new members coming in should assume the equity position. Well, at that time, the equity position was $15,000 if you take total assets divided by total number of members. Since then, now there'll be an $8 million, whether you think it's worth $8 million or not, that's what we're paying for it. $8 million aquatic fitness center, and then if we acquire Kokopelli, $6 million, so $14 more million of assets to your bottom line, and we're not asking you for a penny. Whether or not we should can be debated. So I believe that at the point of acquisition and the point of this being completed, there will be a consideration of raising that equity position, consummate to what making that mathematical equation will equal, and it'll be close to 20, because I've done it. So, any other questions? Seems like we're losing people.
I just have a simple question. When we were when we were acquiring Outlaw, some of us that do not play the tournament, we were told that if we acquire Outlaw, we would always have a course to play with during the tournament season. And you mentioned again that we would have 3 courses, and we would always have a course to play whenever there's a tournament season. And I'm just wondering if that's going to hold.
Yes, sir. Excuse me. Didn't everybody jump up off their seat? I didn't mean to holler at y'all. But you know, one of the main points of making this acquisition is the increased tee times and increased tee time availability. So, all right. One more over here. Figure out the best way to get back here. All right, here we go. And your question, sir.
Yes, sir. I noticed on the income statement that we were seeing a decline in other income. I would hopefully that someone can enlighten me on why we are seeing a decline in other income on that income statement.
All right, where'd Gina? Gina gone? Gina just hightailed it. Okay. Other income is transfer fees. I'm trying to think what else is all in that. Yeah. A lot had it to do with the diminution was the effects of COVID and the aftershocks of that and the effect of depreciation. I mean, not depreciation. Inflation has had on the club, because we did a 10% dues increase, but all that does is take care of what happened in the past. It's not in real time. And we never did raise our prices in real time to try to, you know, mitigate the impact on the membership. So that's the majority of it.
When do you think the vote will be?
Well, the intent is after this meeting is to now early next week send the ballots out for the vote. Here, Mr. Zelt has something to say.
But all I have to say is, you know, I was a golfer. I love golf, and I wished I could play it again. But anybody that brings guests up here and they play alto, outlaw, don't you think that guest is going to ask to play Kokopelli? All of them will, because they just want to test everything, you know, when you're a golfer. So what is the round per golf going to be over there? 75, 80?
What is the guest round? What is it currently over there, Kirk? Do you remember? Okay. It currently is in the $50 range. Pretty cheap. But since it's now part of, if it'd be acquired, it'd be part of the Alto complex. I don't know if it'll stay at 50. It would probably end up being what the market will bear, you know. But I don't see it being 150 or 180, you know. That would be, you know, I think that would be a little high. But again, that will be also to go through Golf and Greens, and it'll go through the process, and the board will decide, you know, what we're going to charge for that. So I can see we've lost, everyone's attention span is over, and including mine. So anyway, first of all, thank you for coming. Thank you for caring. I mean, this will be a determination, this vote, this acquisition will be determined by your vote. It's not going to be forced on anybody, but we are a democracy, so if you're for it and it passes, fine. If you're not for it and it passes, be respectful. If it doesn't pass and you're for it, be respectful. Thanks again, and I'd say there's a special in the club, but I'm not going to say that because there's not. All right.